4R nutrient stewardship and best agronomic practices for increasing and sustaining high groundnut yields. 4R nutrient stewardship is a framework developed to communicate the right way to ensure sustainable and efficient use of fertilizer based on 4 principles, namely applying the right source of fertilizers at the right rate, at the right time, and in the right place. Effective fertilizer use, as guided by 4R nutrient stewardship, is important for developing sustainable cropping systems that support improved food production, increased income for farmers, and enhancement and maintenance of soil fertility. More and better quality groundnut can be produced with fertilizers. The fertility of soils, which has been largely overexploited, can also be restored with fertilizers. Correct management of fertilizers based on the 4Rs can therefore result in better social, economic, and environmental outcomes for farms, villages, communities, and entire countries in Africa. Right source refers to applying the correct fertilizer that provides crops with the nutrients required for good growth and high yields. Different crops have different nutrient requirements. Different fertilizers also provide nutrients in different proportions. Matching the crop's nutrient uptake requirements with the fertilizer that supplies the right mix and proportions of required nutrients ensures that the right source is achieved. Right rate refers to supplying growing plants with the right amount of nutrients for healthy growth and development. Different crops require different quantities of nutrients for healthy growth and development. The quantity of nutrients required by a particular crop also depends on current soil fertility and the crop yield target. Nutrient requirements will increase as soil fertility decreases. Similarly, as crop yields targets increase, the quantity of nutrients required to support those targets also increases. Right time refers to matching nutrients application with the timing of plant nutrient uptake. Most crops take up nutrients slowly during the early stages of growth, but the rate of nutrient uptake increases as crops develop. Fertilizer applications time to match periods of high plant nutrient uptake ensure efficient uptake of applied nutrients. Right place refers to adding nutrients to the soil at a place where the crops can easily access them. Different crops have different rooting characteristics, and this has an influence on their ability to efficiently access and take up applied nutrients. The right placement of fertilizer for a particular crop should be selected to match a crop's rooting characteristics and other aspects such as planting density and tillage system. The right placement method will ensure reduced nutrient losses. Best crop management practices, coupled with the 4Rs, will boost crop productivity amongst farmers.
My name is Mr. Harun Abdullahi, an agronomist from Savannah Agricultural Research Institute, Surrey. Presently, where I'm standing is a demonstration field for our project. Many farmers in this part of the country believe that we don't apply fertilizer to groundnut, and we want to discourage them on this. There's no crop that doesn't need fertilizer. If you don't use the right fertilizer, you will say that it doesn't need fertilizer. As a result of this, we are introducing them to the fertilizer application.
Groundnut is one of the leguminous crops that farmers in this district are cultivating, and they are noted for not applying fertilizer. So we have come to showcase the benefits of applying fertilizer to groundnut crops.
4R good agronomic practices for groundnut. Field selection and management. Groundnut grows best on deep, loose, well-drained sandy soils. Such soils are easily penetrated by groundnut roots, allowing for good pod formation. Such soils also allow for easier harvesting of groundnuts without leaving pods behind in the soil. Suitable fields for growing groundnut should be well drained and not prone to waterlogging, as groundnut cannot tolerate waterlogging. To ensure good groundnut yields each season, avoid growing groundnut on the same field continuously and rotate groundnut with cereal crops such as maize. Planting groundnut in the same field continuously increases the chance of pest and disease infestations. Land preparation. For good growth and yields, groundnut requires a deep seed bed without compaction layers or a hard pan. Groundnut fields should therefore require deep plowing so as to make it easier for roots to penetrate the soil and for pods to be pulled from the ground during harvest. Field preparation should be immediately after the first rains, which is usually around mid-April, so as to ensure the fields are ready for groundnut planting, which usually takes place in early May. Before plowing and harrowing, first clear any overgrown weeds, shrubs and stumps. After the field is cleared of shrubs and stumps, plow the field uniformly to a depth of about 30 centimeters. Plowing should be done when the soil moisture level is low to minimize soil compaction. After plowing, harrow the field uniformly by breaking up any large soil clots that may be present. Then make ridges 50 to 60 centimeters apart. Depending on the type, example, the erect type such as chines and Groundnut 2 should be 50 centimeters, while the spreading type such as Money Printer and F-Mix should be 60 centimeters. Groundnut can be grown on either flat beds or ridges. Ridges are recommended in fields where waterlogging is a problem. Also, groundnut grown on ridges tends to have higher yields due to the looser soil, which enables better rooting and pod formation. Good plowing and harrowing help to control weeds, kill some insect pests, and also makes it easier to incorporate manure, apply fertilizer, and plant. Seed selection and seed rate. For best groundnut yields, plant improved groundnut varieties recommended for your area. To ensure good germination and high yields, plant newly purchased certified seeds of the recommended varieties. Some of the recommended groundnut varieties for northern Ghana include Groundnut 2, Chinese, F-Mix, and Money Printer. If newly purchased certified seeds are not available, farmers can use their own seeds from the first crop of certified seed as seed for the second crop, and second crop seeds for the third crop. Do not plant seed from the third crop. If using own seeds, such seeds should be stored and shelled in the pod until 1 to 2 weeks before planting, when they should be carefully shelled. If using own seed from the previous season, sort out the good seeds for planting by removing small, shriveled, immature, skinned, split or moldy seeds, which are not suitable for planting. The recommended seed rate for good groundnut yields is about 53 to 70 kilograms per hectare, depending on the variety. Based on the size of your farm and the recommended seed rate, acquire enough quantities of seeds in consultation with your agro dealer or your AEA. For our tip: 1. Ensure to buy your groundnut seed from trusted dealers only. 2. Seed packs should contain the following information: groundnut variety, packing date, expiry date, germination rate. 3. Check the seeds to ensure they are of good quality and uniform in appearance, with no deformed or discolored seeds. Planting. Groundnut planting in the northern region should be done immediately after the first rains, which usually occur the first or second week of May. Planting should be conducted when the soil is warm and moist. Avoid planting immediately after heavy rain, as seed can absorb too much water, which leads to rotting. Planting in rows ensures that the right planting density is achieved and also makes weeding and harvesting easier. The recommended planting spacing for groundnut in northern Ghana is a row-to-row spacing of 50 centimeters and 15 centimeters spacing between plants in a row for erect type, and 60 centimeters to 20 centimeters for the spreading type. To achieve the right spacing between rows, Use wooden pegs and planting lines to demarcate row positions and ensure consistency in row spacing depending on the groundnut variety to be planted. In each row, planting holes should be made at a spacing of 15 or 20 centimeters within a row depending on the groundnut variety to be planted. To achieve the right spacing between planting holes, planting twines should be marked at 15 or 20 centimeters intervals, depending on the groundnut variety to be planted. And planting holes that are about 5 centimeters deep made adjacent to those markings using a stick. The same planting twines can be used to guide the making of holes for fertilizer application adjacent to each planting hole at a spacing of 5 centimeters from each planting hole. In each planting hole, sow 1 groundnut seed by hand. After sowing groundnut seeds, apply fertilizer in the holes adjacent to each planting hole, following the recommendations provided in the next section of fertilizer application. After planting, the seeds should be covered well with soil to ensure good contact between the seed and soil and ensure good germination. Fill gaps 1 or 2 weeks after sowing, where no plants have emerged.
To ensure that the right plant population is achieved in groundnut production per unit area, it's very important to harrow your field or manually level the land after plowing. Plant the groundnut with a spacing of 50 by 15 centimeters. 50 centimeters between rows and 15 centimeters between plants.
Elebelen an kaketu be fo aradak la trete comme motetua ne gbinte number te kake ne samba mo bon yo ta na nyeke te bo len kana te kake te nan bo len ba yana no patanyo ka jere te nan sabo yura kana.
The differences between what we are seeing today and in our farms is that we can see that we've cleared this plot and it's very neat, and we are planting. They have also planted with some distance of the seeds, and then they dig a hole for fertilizer, they dig a hole for distance, groundnut, and bury both fertilizer and the groundnut. We expect that we the farmers will apply same to our individual farms, because we can see that the last year the groundnuts from the learning site here, the demonstration field here, it yield more than the one we have been planting in our farms.
My name is James Mayimfa, Nyanokotoro. For area, Potoya, for area, dying, Clavo monitor, the one bull, Abulum. Took point, Takatik point. Kungo to pipe and then night, Kapatakatanga.
Fertilizer application. Fertilizer application in groundnuts should be conducted at planting. For good groundnut yields, fertilizer application should be based on the 4 R's of fertilizer management, so as to ensure that the groundnut crop is supplied with the right source of fertilizer, applied at the right rate, at the right time in the growing season, and at the right place where growing plants can easily access nutrients supplied. To understand the best 4R practices for good groundnut yields, it is important to understand the key nutrients required by the groundnut crop for good growth and how they should be supplied. For good growth and yields, groundnut requires to take up large quantities of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Since groundnut can biologically fix, that is, manufacture its own nitrogen, it does not require fertilization with large quantities of nitrogen. Application of small quantities of nitrogen together with phosphorus and potassium is sufficient for good yields. Groundnut can, however, not fix other nutrients it requires in large quantities such as phosphorus and potassium, and these need to be supplied through fertilizers.
The best fertilizer grade is one with low nitrogen content. So we have several fertilizer products in the market, but what is recommended that is available in the market for use is the fertilizer with the 11, 22, 21 grade. That is 11% of nitrogen content, 22% of the phosphate, and 21% of the potassium. The fertilizer for groundnut is best applied at the time you are planting the groundnut, and the method of applying is by dibbling and burying the fertilizer. So basically, this is how we expect farmers to apply the fertilizer. With groundnuts, we do not do split fertilizer application because the nitrogen content is low, and it's low because the groundnut itself is able to fix its own nitrogen. So the applied nitrogen is just a starter nitrogen for the crop.
It isn't that groundnut doesn't need fertilizer. The type of fertilizer that you have to apply to groundnut is there. It doesn't need fertilizer with high nitrogen content. So because of this, we are introducing a fertilizer with low nitrogen content so that they will also adopt to this.
So unkambe ya ki nalangwa trete. So timara profite kungu doyela ko chonde ya yango bul. To ya dala tala ke suma kala manga.
Iya yonna tana ko takbabuna. Nina ko fala ke jirke mana nyike bebelne sama nyo konkona nambe ke bebelne sama nyo. Mo abe dojina ka kam nambe china. Ngede to na ka de bomma akbabuna.
Right source. The right source of fertilizer for groundnut are compound fertilizers or fertilizer blends that supply small quantities of nitrogen but can contain large proportions of phosphorus and potassium. Farmers should therefore select fertilizers that contain high proportions of phosphorus and potassium and small contents of nitrogen such as NPK 11, 22, 21 plus 5 sulfur plus 0.72 zinc plus 0.5 boron. In addition, for farmers who have previously experienced a large number of empty groundnut shells, gypsum should be applied to provide a readily available source of calcium, which helps to ensure full pods. If fertilizer blends that contain only phosphorus, potassium, and other beneficial nutrients such as sulfur and calcium are available, these can also be used to fertilize groundnut. Farmers can also get recommendations from their agro dealers or AEAs on the locally available fertilizer that is best suited for groundnut. Right rate. Groundnut needs to be supplied with about 20 kilograms nitrogen per hectare and 40 kilograms P2O5 per hectare and 40 kilograms K2O per hectare. To achieve the right rate using NPK 11, 22, 21 plus 5 sulfur plus 0.72 zinc plus 0.5 boron, 4 bags of fertilizer will be required per hectare. To achieve the right rate for different field sizes, follow the guidelines presented in the following table. Field size 1 acre. Number of 50 kg bags into bracket NPK 11, 22, 21. 1.5 bags, 2 acres, 3 bags, 5 acres, 7.5 bags. The rates above can be adjusted for any size of field by multiplying the size of the field in acres by 1.5 bags. In fields where calcium application is required, application of 625 kg bags, that is 150 kg of gypsum or Omia calcipril per acre will be required. For our tip, if you do not have any fertilizer, you can grow groundnut in the field where maize had previously been grown and applied with fertilizer containing phosphorus. Right time. For best growth and yields, groundnut should be fertilized during planting when there is adequate moisture in the soil. Right place. To ensure right placement of fertilizer, use a stick to make small holes about 5 centimeters from each ground plant stand. Use a bottle top or teaspoon to apply equal amounts of the selected fertilizer in each hole, by applying a third full bottle top or a third full teaspoon in each hole. Cover the applied fertilizer with soil to avoid nutrient losses. Applying fertilizer 5 cm away from the plant prevents the fertilizer from contacting and damaging the plant as the fertilizer dissolves. In soils that require application of calcium, the gypsum or Omia calcipril should be applied by broadcasting near the base of the plant at the beginning of flowering.
Applied nitrogen is just a starter nitrogen for the crop. What is needed most is the phosphorus and potassium. For that matter, the recommended rate to apply is 20 nitrogen kilograms per hectare, 40 phosphate kilogram per hectare, and then 40 potassium kilograms per hectare. For commercial farmers, we normally recommend that you should apply 20, 40, 40 kilogram per hectare. However, our farmers usually do not even cultivate up to a hectare. So depending on the area or the field area that they plant, we just tell them what quantity to give to a plant stand. So if you take the bottle top cork and you measure to fill that top cork, it is able to fertilize 4 hills or 4 plant stands for the granules, and this is the recommended rate that we want farmers to adopt to enhance their groundnut yields.
Groundnut crop management. Management of weeds. Weeds reduce the growth and yield of groundnut by competing for nutrients, water, and light. Weed control is especially important when the plants are small during the first 6 weeks and as the pods are setting. For best yields, groundnut fields should be kept weed-free by conducting timely weeding at regular intervals. Usually 2 to 3 weedings are normally needed. Weed control can be manual, chemical, or both. Manual weed control. Weed about 3 to 4 weeks after planting and again at around 6 weeks after planting. Chemical weed control. Herbicides can be used for both pre-emergence and post-emergence weed control. To control the early and post-emergence of weeds, apply post-emergence weed control herbicides recommended for groundnut immediately following planting. If there are actively growing weeds in the field at planting, spray non-selective herbicide such as glyphosate or paraquat after applying the pre-emergence herbicide. If only pre-emergence herbicide is applied at planting, one weeding may be required at 5 to 6 weeks after planting. Before applying any herbicide, carefully read and follow instructions provided by the manufacturer or consult your local AEA. Crop rotation and good field preparation during plowing and harrowing also help to control weeds. 4R tips for weed management. During weeding, avoid covering young plants with soil as it increases the risk of disease infestation and reduces yields. Take care when walking through the groundnut field when the crop is flowering to prevent disturbing the flowers as it will reduce yields. At pegging, avoid disturbing the soil near the plants. At this stage, pull weeds by hand and avoid use of hoes. Management of pests. Pests can cause considerable damage to groundnut when infestations are high. Regular weekly monitoring of groundnut should be conducted to monitor the presence of insect pests. Common groundnut pests affecting groundnuts include aphids, caterpillars, termites, and thrips, rodents such as rats and rabbits. If pests are damaging pods, control the pests with recommended insecticides, taking care to follow instructions provided by the manufacturer or consult your local agricultural extension agent. The following table provides some recommended pest control and prevention measures. Pest and impact. Aphids, mainly a threat because they spread viral diseases such as groundnut rosette, but can also affect groundnut plants directly by sucking sap. Signs: small brownish gray insects, mainly on growing tips and young foliage. Management: control: spray with suitable insecticide, example, dimethoate. Into bracket, make sure to follow manufacturer's instructions. Prevention: plant early using the recommended planting distance. Rotate groundnut with cereal crops such as maize. Conduct regular weeding. Plant tolerant or resistant varieties if available. Groundnut leaf miner is the caterpillar of the moth, which tunnels into the leaf to feed, emerging when it is larger. Infestation can totally destroy your crop. Signs: distorted leaves due to caterpillars inside. Leaves folded over or stuck together with silk. Leaves turn brown, roll up, and dry. Management: control: spray with suitable insecticide, example, dimethoate, making sure to follow manufacturer's instructions. Prevention: plant early. Rotate groundnut with cereal crops such as maize. Conduct regular weeding. Plant tolerant or resistant varieties if available. Termites: destroy roots and make holes in pods and seeds. Signs: wilting and death of plants. Presence of termite mounds. Management: control: apply recommended insecticides to seed or soil, making sure to follow manufacturer's instructions. Prevention: avoid growing groundnut in areas with obvious signs of termites. Plant early. Dig out and destroy termite nests. Conduct timely harvesting to avoid pod damage. Thrips: small yellow, green, or black flying insects that feed on flowers and leaves. Signs: dwarfing and distortion of leaves with yellow or green patches. Management: control: spray with suitable insecticide, example, dimethoate, making sure to follow manufacturer's instructions. Prevention: plant resistant varieties if available. Management of diseases. Groundnut rosette disease is the most important groundnut disease in northern Ghana. It is caused by a virus transmitted by aphids. Groundnut rosette occurs in three forms: chlorotic rosette, mosaic rosette, and green mosaic rosette. Groundnut plants with chlorotic rosette have bright yellow leaves, except for small parts that remain green. The yellowing may affect the whole plant or only some shoots. Early infections result in severely stunted plants with small deformed leaves. Groundnut plants with mosaic rosette have yellow and dark green areas on the leaves. Plants are stunted, although not as seriously as with chlorotic rosette. Groundnut plants with green mosaic have very dark green small leaves or have a light and dark green mosaic with leaf margins rolled downwards. They too are stunted if infected early. In all forms of groundnut rosette disease, early infection causes severe pod loss and reduced yields. Prevention measures: remove any self-sown groundnut that has germinated as a result of the last crop. Plant at the recommended plant spacing, which gives a high planting density that covers the soil as quickly as possible. The landing behavior of aphids which spread the disease is disturbed when the soil is covered. Early planting in order to produce a crop before the arrival of winged aphids. Intercropping with maize or sorghum. Crop rotation with maize or sorghum. Control measures. If rosette disease occurs, diseased groundnut plants should be removed as soon as they are seen and destroyed. Weeds should also be removed from within and around the groundnut fields. After harvest, all plant debris should be collected and destroyed by burning or used as fodder for livestock. The most reliable control method is, however, the planting of disease-resistant varieties such as Sari Nut 2.
The disease is also one of the main problems facing farmers within this area, the groundnut rosette. Because of this, we have come to introduce this particular variety, Sarinat 2, which we will follow up with all the good agronomic practices so that the farmers will bounce back to groundnut production. What's normal even encourage disease infestation is sanitation, farm sanitation. So through this demonstration, we are encouraging farmers to practice farm sanitation. As you can see the field here, the sanitation is good. So when you practice this with all the required agronomic practices, you can avoid those diseases.
4R tips for safe use of chemicals for pest and disease control. Use only herbicides, pesticides and fungicides that are recommended for groundnut to avoid damage to plants. Chemicals can be toxic to humans, so always follow instructions on the product package or from the agro dealer for safe use. Also follow instructions about the time needed between spraying and safe consumption of fresh pods. Do not store chemicals in the same place as food. Do not eat from the same spoon used to measure chemicals. Harvesting. When the groundnut crop looks mature, test for maturity by randomly digging a few plants. Crack the pods and observe the inside wall. Matured pods have dark brown inside walls. Avoid using yellowing of leaves as the only indication of maturity, as yellowing of leaves could be a symptom of disease infestation. Groundnuts should be harvested as soon as the crop is mature. After harvesting, remove soil from the pods before leaving to dry. Remove immature pods attached to the hulls and avoid long-term contact of pods with soil after harvest. Dry harvested groundnut in the sun and protect from rain and animals, preferably dry on a mat, plastic sheet or tarpaulin, or on a raised platform. Avoid drying on bare ground to prevent infection with aflatoxins. Strip the pods immediately after drying. Remove damaged, shriveled or rotten pods before storage. Avoid mixing clean harvested pods with cleaned pods. Store the pods under dry, well-ventilated conditions to ensure they stay dry. Avoid pod damage by insects by applying recommended insecticides during storage. Ensure to follow manufacturer's instructions. Thank you.
Kurataran karnaba amma konkona ma agrikdam dai kana motum be katbe mbe ngwana tikanke ba be ngbangan ke jir ke tanan ko fes na buna katbe kana ajin lebani kalake manan ko kakan na babu nan ya gurbe ba be na tila nyur kangi kanapon
fo ayel dang bu mo to mom na lebeli lankuy made ntaw mo manan ko mulan kusma mbem ka te be nyan duna mbem ba tan do ku tak par mo pon classe bi ki fo ayel su mote mba mo